And good afternoon. Welcome. It's Monday, 1 o'clock. Actually, 1:01. We're getting started here, trying to work out a couple technical issues here. I've got Eric Graham on the phone. He's sitting here to answer any questions if we have some for him. Want to talk about commercial real estate because both Eric and I get a lot of questions from agents about, where are the forms? What forms do I use to write a commercial deal? Should I be involved, and so on and so forth. First of all, we are not allowed to use the Commercial Alliance of Realtor forms, the CAR forms. And so if you are not a member of CAR, you can't use the CAR forms to write up commercial transactions. So that's one thing I want to get out of the way real fast. If you are part of a multiple listing system that has its own commercial forms and a separate commercial multiple listing system, then likewise you would not be able to do that unless you become a member of that commercial entity. Now, in many of the multiple listing systems, they are joint, as was the Grand Rapids Association of Realtors, had commercial realtors and residential realtors all on the same MLS until about maybe 15 years ago, when they started their own multiple listing system called CAR, and we can't use their forms. Okay. Suddenly, I have no computer. Wow. This is a problem. Okay, here we go. I'm fine. All right. Sorry, we had a pop-up there that wouldn't go away. To those people who say, should I get involved in commercial? What should I do? Should I take this listing? Should I refer it out? Should I help this buyer find a commercial lease for a strip mall or office building or whatever? My answer is I always keep growing, learning every aspect of the real estate industry. The more you know, the more you'll grow. And confidence in that growth comes from knowledge. The more knowledge you have, the more confident you're going to be in advising your clients. But Eric and I also point out that under the occupational code, we are limited in our abilities to help people by our scope of expertise. Always work within your scope of expertise. If you're not an expert in commercial real estate, you shouldn't be operating in commercial real estate. That doesn't mean you shouldn't learn how and learn how to get into the business, but it can be considerably more complex than residential. But it happens every day. Commercial real estate transactions are happening every day, and people are getting paid for it. Agents are getting commission for it. So why shouldn't it be you? Well, I learned an aspect of commercial, and what we find is that many agents who are commercial agents 100%, they have a niche. They operate in one area or two areas, whether it's leases. We have one of our agents who specializes in convenience stores and packaged liquor stores. Another agent who does other types of commercial projects. I used to do a lot of commercial vacant land, Eric, you've done a number of commercial transactions yourself, right?
Yeah, I've done everything from salons to restaurants and bars, software company proprietary exchanges, asset purchase agreements, management agreements. You name it. I've done a lot of it, but again, there's still times where I always need to bring in an attorney towards the very end to finalize and dot the I's and cross the T's.
Yeah. For example, anything over 4 units in a residential apartment building is considered commercial. And when you enter into that, you're going to be dealing with commercial financing. You very often commercial residential properties have what they call an APOD, APOD acronym for Annual Property Operating Data Form. It gives the income and revenue and the expenses, operational expenses for any property. Let's say you've got a 12-unit apartment building or you've got a 100-unit apartment complex. It will give you all of the details about what the income is from all of those units individually and combined, as well as the expenses for plowing the snow, mowing the lawn, roof expenses. It will show whether or not there's a sinking fund where there is a certain amount contributed out of the rents every month toward a future new roof when it comes due. An APOD is a critical piece of information that a buyer has to have and be able to weigh their decision about a purchase. They will also have chattel list and a chattel agreement. For example, in a 12-unit apartment complex, again, to use an example, are the refrigerators all owned by the building, or are some of them owned by the tenants? What about washers and dryers, stoves and refrigerators? Stoves and microwaves. All of those personal property items, who owns them? If they are owned by the property owner, the one who's selling the apartment complex, then they have to be listed and included in the sale, either as part of the sale or in a separate chattel agreement. Commercial transactions often involve a letter of intent, which is drafted by the client's attorney before a purchase agreement is even constructed. And I'm going to again turn to Eric and ask, I know you've dealt with letters of intent. Eric, can you give us just a brief overview of the steps, 1, 2, 3, in a commercial transaction that would involve a letter of intent?
Yeah, so when it comes to letters of intent, it's really, let's say if I'm representing a client and we're looking at buying a property, the letter of intent is it's a formality. It doesn't have to be a binding letter of intent. It could be non-binding, but it's basically both parties negotiating in advance, where they might be spelling out certain terms that they want to negotiate up front, or they don't want the attorneys going back and forth with, because it costs money. You have a buyer and a seller who can negotiate along with the agent certain principles, the meat of what's trying to be done. Maybe a price, maybe it's an allocation of the business that's being sold, the actual real estate that's being sold. Maybe there's a management agreement in place that the new buyer is going to manage the business for 6 months, and the seller is going to be compensated $10,000 for that. There could be an asset purchase agreement that's drafted, that's being addressed in that letter of intent, that, hey, when this buyer buys this commercial property, there's $100,000 of assets. Well, we want to tell you that up front. There could be goodwill that's negotiated up front, where, hey, I'm selling you this property along with my business, and I'm also going to be adding $300,000 worth of goodwill, and also putting in a non-compete in there. Now, there's tax ramifications for that from a buyer and seller, but these are all these types of small things that we like to try to address up front, so that when we go to the attorney, we're not reinventing the wheel. It's our job as agents to really help bring the two parties together, let us negotiate outside of the attorneys, and then bring it to the attorneys finalize the purchase agreement where both parties can feel good about the arrangement, and we can get to the closing.
Did you mention confidentiality agreements?
There can be confidentiality agreements as well, definitely.
Yeah. Very often in a commercial transaction, a seller doesn't want anyone to know that they're selling their property, their business, and so they will require a confidentiality agreement be signed by a prospective buyer that says you can't tell anybody that you're looking into this property or that I have it for sale. So, or the terms of the contract, obviously. When you're selling a business, for example, that has not just the real estate, but it also has inventory and equipment, there are revenue and expenses. Eric, have you ever had a commercial transaction that was subject to a buyer's review of the seller's Schedule C IRS form?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I've sold probably in my lifetime 12 pharmacies, one of the most highly regulated industries, and you would be amazed at what we're asking for, or even when we're buying or selling, what's being asked of us. And normally it could be 2 to 3 years of financial statements that you have to go back, provide them with corporate and your Schedule C tax returns, any type of security agreements, personal guarantees that you have. They'll even ask for insurance policies. We'll do description of liens and do UCC filings to make sure that there aren't any liens against any of your assets of the company that we're trying to buy, because all of those have to be removed. We'll look at depreciation schedules from tax returns. We want to know how much you've already depreciated the building that I'm going to buy. Mm-hmm. It's just things that we're always looking into. And Don, we're going to be providing some type of overview that we can attach to 5-Star Connect, but it's just really a guide to selling a small business. Mm-hmm. And it's just going to allow agents to understand what do you really need from a paperwork standpoint to better understand how to sell a company or how to sell a business.
For example,
if you're selling commercial real estate, I always look at commercial real estate. If you just have the property, that's a lot easier than when you have a property and also trying to sell a business. Mm-hmm. So keep that in mind as you're getting into commercial real estate. Maybe you don't want to go after that real estate market that also has a business that you have to sell. Maybe you want to bring someone else on board. It's a heck of a lot easier just to look at a piece of property and try to sell that. Yeah. But Don, you may have other insights on that as well.
You mentioned bars, restaurants, sort of thing. The offer may be subject to the approval by the state of Michigan for the transfer of a liquor license, right?
Yeah, the MLCC liquor license transfer, yes.
So going out and selling a bar or restaurant, for example, you need to know whether or not the buyer is going to be able to qualify according to the terms of the requirements of the state of Michigan to have that liquor license transferred to them. So then you talk about vacant land. I used to do a lot of vacant land, as I mentioned, in the commercial building business. And you have to go to the municipality and to the county and to the state, depending on the road that it's on, who controls the road, for access, whether or not you're going to be required to put aprons on that road, if it's a busy road, for example, where you're going to be able to access it. You'll notice, for example, at the location, the intersection of Wilson and Lake Michigan Drive on the southwest corner, there's a Meijer store. And that location has a number of ingress points, but all of them have aprons to get off and out of the way of traffic in order to access the Meijer location. That's going to be a requirement of the road commission, the county road commission, or in this particular case, it would be the state road commission because it's M11, which is a Michigan state road. Then we talk about environmental issues. Especially in commercial transactions, we want to know whether or not there has been a dry cleaner operation there, or a painting facility, a body shop, a gas station, of course, anything that might have underground storage tanks or have leakage, which may have occurred over the years, of any toxic chemicals being leaked into the soil. Two questions in just a moment. So you're going to need to know what a BEA, a baseline environmental assessment, is. What's a phase 1 environmental study? You're going to need soil samples. What about asbestos? If you're selling an old factory building or an old school building, you may discover that the lower basement level, the ceiling of the basement, is covered in asbestos. Water testing, DEQ evaluation for capacity of water, holding ponds, underground storage tanks, all of those things. I'm going to get to 1031 exchanges in just a moment, but I want to go and check our questions here. What if the listing has the terms? I'm not sure what exactly that means.
This was from a bit ago, 4 minutes ago.
Christy, can you clarify what is the listing? What if the listing has the terms in the listing? Can you still negotiate? I need some clarification on that.
I know that with a lot of the buy-sell agreements and even Carter's documents that they have, they will actually, in some of the sections, define the environmental reports and assessments and who's paying for what. Or they will spell out the terms associated within that purchase agreement. So yes, I mean, if I think what you're asking is, can you negotiate who's going to pay for what? And definitely, yes, you can.
Okay. Vanessa, do live-work properties like an artist's loft studio fall under commercial property guidelines and rules? And can the buyer's intended use of the property affect the designation commercial versus residential? My answer to that would be yes, it probably does, especially if it's already zoned commercial. If you are going into a loft and you're going to transform it into both a workspace as well as a living space, you're probably going to have to fall under commercial guidelines and rules. Eric, give me your opinion on that.
Yeah, the biggest thing is what it's zoned. So many times we have to be very careful where you have local cities changing their zoning. You might have certain corridors that the homes might have been residential, but the future of that home is zoned commercial. And the problem is that once someone starts activating a commercial business within that residential, it's now going to conform to the city's new zoning of commercial. It can no longer go back to residential. So people need to be very mindful of what it's being zoned, because once someone, like I said, once someone starts acting commercial, once they put a business in there and start treating that like commercial, they no longer have that exemption of residential in certain areas.
Okay, back to Christie's question. Thank you, Eric. Back to Christie's question. They have it listed what they want as well as what is included, like who's paying for what and so on. Yeah, of course, it's still negotiable. It all depends on how willing the seller is to negotiate. They may not be willing to negotiate at all, but it's certainly negotiable. And you don't have to be a commercial agent to write a commercial offer. But I will say to you that it would be wise, if you're going to go down the road of doing commercial work, that you seek out a mentor, that you do it, your first several transactions at least, that you do that under the watchful eye of someone who knows that specific business, whatever it is, whether it's vacant land, commercial vacant land for retail and fast food, that's what I did, or it's pharmacies and bars and so on, salons like Eric has done. I know that we have Kevin Knoll who does a lot of leasing work, and others. Jerry Towner in our company does a lot of convenience store, packaged liquor operations. So if you're paying somebody a referral fee to learn the business, I think that's fairly inexpensive tuition to get into a very high-paying part of the real estate industry. Another thing that people have to be very careful of is, again, to be working within the scope of your expertise. A 1031 exchange, for example, let's pretend that a couple has a retail store that they're selling, and then they're going to retire to Florida or Arizona or wherever. And they want to take the proceeds from that sale of their retail store and put it into a 10-unit apartment building. Well, according to the IRS code, if you're going to do a 1031 exchange, which essentially shifts money from one investment, their business, to another investment, their 10-unit apartment building, there are very specific requirements in terms of when you state that you're going to do that and how soon you have to make that transfer. And I'm not an expert on 1031 exchanges. Some title companies have really good 1031 exchange people, but I will tell you, I will recommend very strongly that if anyone has a business that they are going to sell and they're going to buy something else, the first question that should come out of your mouth is, are you going to do a 1031 exchange? And if their answer is, what's that? I would direct them immediately to a CPA or a tax attorney. If, for example, in this case where a couple has sold their retail business and they buy an apartment complex, and at no point did you mention it, that they should be sheltering tax dollars or revenue dollars from taxes, and you never mentioned that the 1031 exchange was an option, then you've just operated outside of the scope of your abilities, of your expertise, and you could be found liable for that. So be sure that when you are dealing with commercial properties, particularly investments and businesses that somebody is selling in their retirement, make sure that you ask the question about 1031 exchange, and if they say yes or what's that, get them to a tax attorney or CPA who is knowledgeable, and not all of them are knowledgeable, but to get them to one who is knowledgeable in 1031 exchanges. Would you agree with that, Eric, or not?
Oh, definitely. Anytime we're dealing with that 1031, I'm always asking them just to speak, get some additional guidance and counsel, because they only have one shot at this, and if they screw it up, they're not going to be very happy.
Yeah. The other thing I'll encourage people to do is Google, do a Google search for due diligence for real estate, commercial real estate in Michigan. I did that search this morning, and I found a number of sites that were really helpful in talking about, for example, environmental issues, environmental due diligence for a developer, as well as a number of other topics. I also always encourage people to get education. The CCIM.com is a commercial organization that specializes in, and it's very simple. They provide educational programs on commercial real estate, and I want to just scroll real quickly here. The acronym CCIM actually stands for Certified Commercial Investment Member. And you'll find that if you are involved in the commercial end of the business, if you become a member of CAR, for example, you'll see a number of real estate agents and brokers who carry the designation CCIM. It is a very high level real estate designation. Again, going back to getting a mentor, if you're going to be serious about the business, I would encourage anyone to get someone to study under, to be have watch over you as you are going through the process of learning. And after 2, 3, 4 deals, you're going to start to know what to look out for and where the pitfalls may lie. Eric, do you have anything more you can add?
Yeah, I wanted to say you have to be mindful with commercial transactions that the due diligence period, they're very extended periods, and it's not uncommon for a purchase agreement to allow a buyer an out up to the day of closing. And it's also from a compensation, we could see 8 to 10% commission rates, but every single rate is negotiable. But we typically see higher fees in commercial real estate.
Oh,
It's because it takes a lot longer. I mean, you have 6 months of due diligence. You have negotiations. It could even take maybe 9 months to get to a close. So it's not as quick as residential. So if you're able to turn over 2 deals of residential within 30 days, you might be making more money doing residential than you are commercial. It's going to take 6 months to get a close on a commercial deal.
Well, and that's very true. I would say that the average length of time closing vacant land for commercial use, in my experience, was 9 months. By the time we had all of the proposals, the letters of intent, confidentiality agreements signed, reviewed by attorneys, the purchase agreement drafted, and then all the municipal requirements, DEQ, state road approvals, all of those things on average would take about 9 months. So that's not unusual.
And I don't want to scare anyone with commercial real estate because it's not scary. It's just like any other process. You have to learn. When you got into residential real estate, your first day you didn't know anything either, and it was a process. And so is commercial real estate. And if you're interested in this, the first thing I would do is get involved with Commercial Alliance of Realtors or CAR, or you can look up CBOR, Commercial Board of Realtors, and you can pay quarterly fees for them. And you can start educating yourself on the process. You can have access to all their documents, but you can start learning the process. It's just like anything else. You got to put the time into it to become the expert.
Absolutely, and I totally agree that the more you want to expand the knowledge of your real estate business, that's going to give you more opportunities to grow your business as well as to grow personally. So. Any other questions? Again, I encourage, if you're going to do that, to find a mentor who can help you and guide you along the way. And if you have questions, call Eric or myself, and we will, if we don't have the answers, we'll get them for you. So thanks again for joining this Monday, and we will see you next week.